9 causes of a car losing power. When accelerating, and what you should check first. You press the gas pedal, but instead of pulling forward smoothly, your car feels weak. It hesitates, it struggles, and sometimes it feels like the engine wants to go, but the power just is not there. That kind of problem is not only frustrating, it can also be dangerous. Because when your car loses power while accelerating, you may not have the response you need when merging, overtaking, or climbing a hill. The truth is, this symptom can happen for several very different reasons. Some are simple and relatively cheap to fix. Others can get expensive if you keep driving too long without finding the real cause. And the biggest mistake many drivers make is replacing random parts before understanding where the power loss is really coming from. In this video, I'll show you 9 common causes of a car losing power when accelerating. We'll start with some of the easier and more common causes first, then move into the more serious and more hidden ones, and stay until the end. Because one of the last causes on this list is often ignored at first, even though it can make the car feel weak every time you try to speed up. So before you panic, and before you waste money guessing, let's go step by step. Cause number 1. Clogged fuel filter. Let's start with one of the most common fuel-related causes. Your fuel filter is there to stop dirt, rust, and other contaminants from reaching the engine. But over time, that filter can get restricted. And when it does, fuel flow may not be enough when the engine needs more power. That matters most during acceleration. At idle, the engine does not need much fuel. But when you press the gas pedal, fuel demand goes up. If the filter is clogged, the engine may hesitate, feel weak, or struggle to pull properly. This is why some cars seem almost normal at low speed, but feel slow and unresponsive when trying to accelerate harder. If your car loses power more noticeably uphill, under load, or during quick acceleration, the fuel filter is one of the first things worth checking. Cause number 2. Weak fuel pump or low fuel pressure. Now let's stay with the fuel system, because this next one can create a very similar symptom. The fuel pump moves fuel from the tank to the engine at the pressure the engine needs. If the pump is weak, or fuel pressure drops under load, your car may still start and idle, but it may lose power the moment you ask for more acceleration. That is because the engine suddenly needs more fuel and the system cannot keep up. You may notice slow response from the gas pedal, stumbling during acceleration, loss of power at higher speed, or the engine feeling like it is starving for fuel. This problem can be tricky because at first it may seem inconsistent. One day the car feels mostly okay, another day it feels weak, but over time the issue usually gets more obvious. So if the power loss happens more when accelerating hard, climbing hills, or carrying extra weight, low fuel pressure is a real possibility. Cause number 3, dirty or clogged air filter. Now let's move to the air side. Your engine does not just need fuel, it also needs enough clean air. If the air filter is badly clogged, the engine may struggle to get the airflow it needs. And without enough air, combustion becomes less efficient. That means less power. This is one of the easiest problems to overlook because an air filter looks too simple to cause a serious drivability issue. But if it is heavily restricted, especially on an older or poorly maintained vehicle, it absolutely can contribute to sluggish acceleration. The good news is, this is often one of the cheapest things to inspect and replace. So if your car feels weak and you cannot remember the last time the air filter was changed, start there. Sometimes the small maintenance items cause the biggest driving frustrations. Cause number 4, dirty or failing mass airflow sensor. This is one of the most common hidden causes. The mass airflow sensor, or MAF sensor, measures how much air is entering the engine. Then the computer uses that information to decide how much fuel to inject. If the MAF sensor is dirty or starts failing, the reading may be wrong. And once the reading is wrong, the air-fuel mixture can also be wrong. That can lead to hesitation, poor throttle response, rough acceleration, bad fuel economy, or a general feeling that the engine has lost strength. This kind of problem often makes the car feel lazy. You press the pedal, but the response is delayed or weak. In some cases, cleaning the sensor may help. In other cases, the sensor needs replacement. But either way, this is one of those small parts that can create a surprisingly big loss of power. Cause number 5, bad spark plugs, ignition coils, or engine misfire. Now we get into a very common reason for weak acceleration. Your engine needs a strong, properly timed spark to ignite the air-fuel mixture in each cylinder. If the spark plugs are worn or an ignition coil is weak, combustion may become incomplete. That leads to misfires. And when the engine misfires, it cannot produce power the way it should. You may feel shaking, jerking, hesitation, rough running, or a clear lack of power when you try to accelerate. Sometimes the problem is mild at first, then it gets worse. And if you ignore it too long, it can damage more expensive parts later. This is why an ignition problem should never be dismissed as just a small annoyance. If your car feels weak and also runs rough, this cause moves much higher on the list. Cause number 6. Faulty oxygen sensor. The oxygen sensor helps the engine computer monitor what is happening in the exhaust and adjust the air-fuel mixture. If the sensor's not reading correctly, the engine may start running too rich or too lean. And when that happens, performance can suffer. The car may still drive, but acceleration may feel weaker, less smooth, or less consistent than before. You may also notice poor fuel economy, rough running, or a check engine light. This is one of those problems that does not always feel dramatic right away. Sometimes it starts as a gradual drop in performance. Then one day, you realize the car no longer pulls the way it used to. So if the engine feels weaker than normal and fuel mileage also dropped, the oxygen sensor is worth checking. Cause number 7, vacuum leak or unmetered air entering the engine. This one can be very frustrating because it often creates several symptoms at once. Your engine relies on a controlled amount of air, but if there is a vacuum leak, extra air can get in without being measured properly. That throws off the air-fuel ratio. And when the ratio is off, the engine may hesitate, idle rough, or lose power when accelerating. You may notice a rough, idle, inconsistent engine response, a hissing sound or power that comes and goes. Vacuum leaks can happen because of cracked hoses, bad gaskets, or loose connections. And because those problems are not always obvious, people often replace other parts first without solving the real issue. So if your car feels weak, but the symptoms seem slightly irregular or confusing, a vacuum leak should absolutely be considered. Cause number 8. Restricted exhaust or failing catalytic converter. Now let's talk about one of the more serious causes. Your engine needs to breathe in, but it also needs to breathe out. If the exhaust is restricted, the engine cannot get rid of exhaust gases properly. That makes it much harder to produce power efficiently. One major cause of exhaust restriction is a failing catalytic converter. When that happens, the vehicle may feel fine at first, then weak under acceleration, especially at higher speeds or under heavy load. You may notice sluggish acceleration, loss of top-end power, engine heat, or a general feeling that the car is being held back. This is not usually the first failure. In many cases, a catalytic converter gets damaged because another issue, like a misfire, was ignored for too long. So if the car feels especially weak when you try to accelerate harder and other simpler causes have already been ruled out, a restricted exhaust system becomes much more likely. Cause number 9, transmission-related problem. And finally, one cause many people blame on the engine first, even though the real issue may be elsewhere. If your engine revs but the car does not accelerate the way it should, the problem may be in the transmission. A slipping automatic transmission, low or contaminated transmission fluid, or shifting problems can make the vehicle feel weak when you try to speed up. This is why some drivers say, "My engine sounds like it is working, but the car is not moving like it should." That difference matters, because if RPM goes up but speed does not build properly, you should not only think about engine power, you should also think about how that power is being delivered to the wheels. Transmission issues can feel like engine weakness, especially at highway speed or when trying to accelerate from a stop. So if the engine sounds active but the vehicle still feels lazy, do not ignore the drivetrain side of the problem. Now here is something important. Not every power loss feels the same. If the engine shakes, misfires, or jerks, think more about spark, fuel, or air problems. If the engine feels smooth but weak, think about airflow, fuel pressure, or exhaust restriction. And if the engine revs but the car does not move properly, start thinking about the transmission too. That is why guessing can get expensive, because the symptom may feel simple, but the real cause may be somewhere you did not expect. So what should you do first if your car is losing power when accelerating? Start with the basics. Ask yourself a few simple questions. Does it happen only under hard acceleration? Does it happen uphill? Is the engine shaking? Is there a check engine light? Has fuel economy dropped? Does the car idle rough or only feel weak under load? Those details matter because they help narrow down whether the issue is fuel, air, spark, exhaust, or transmission related. If possible, scan the car for trouble codes instead of replacing parts blindly. A proper diagnosis can save time, money, and a lot of frustration. So let's quickly recap. A car can lose power when accelerating because of a clogged fuel filter, a weak fuel pump or low fuel pressure, a dirty air filter, a bad mass airflow sensor, worn spark plugs or weak ignition coils, a faulty oxygen sensor, a vacuum leak, a restricted exhaust or failing catalytic converter, or a transmission-related problem. Some of these are simple, some are expensive, and some start small but get much worse if you keep driving without fixing them. That is why this symptom should never be ignored for too long, because weak acceleration is not just annoying. It can also become a safety issue when you need quick response on the road. And now I want to hear from you. What symptom did your car show first when it started losing power? Was it hesitation, poor acceleration, rough, idle, jerking, a check engine light? Or did the engine rev without the car moving properly? Comment below with the exact symptom you noticed first. And if enough people mention the same issue, I'll make the next video on that exact problem.